Sam absolutely loved hiking, and one spring he went on a hiking trip in Europe. During most of the trip, he went on hikes with his group and guide, but one day he decided to go on a solo adventure. Deep inside the woods, he stumbled upon an airplane from the Second World War, and naturally, being as curious as he was, he needed to take a look inside. But then, he found something that immediately made him call the police. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Sam's mouth fell open when he saw the plane in the middle of the forest, just waiting to be found. It looked very old and abandoned, and he decided to take a look inside. He could not just leave and miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He carefully climbed inside it and looked around in the cockpit. He was transported right back in time, and he still could not believe that he was inside an actual plane that had been used in WW2. But then, he set his eyes on something that was not supposed to be in there. Sam gasped when he realized what it was. He knew he needed to do something right away. He called the police and hoped they would get to him as soon as possible. But what did Sam find inside the plane? And whatever it was, how did it get there? Why did he need to call the police? If there was one thing Sam absolutely loved doing, it was hiking. He enjoyed spending time in nature, no matter whether it was raining or the sun was shining. And every weekend, he found a new place to hike, much to the annoyance of his girlfriend, Kelsey. This particular weekend, too, that's right, hiking. But this weekend was different from the usual ones. He was on a hiking vacation, exploring the beautiful nature in Europe. It was the last weekend of the trip, and he only had a few days left before he had to go home. And these few days would go a lot differently than he'd ever expected. This day, he decided not to hike with the rest of the group, but to follow his own plan. He was more experienced than the others, and he wanted to make the best of his trip while he was still there. They had taken the bus to the forest together, and after about 15 minutes of walking, he told them, "See you later," and went in another direction. He liked the people who were in his group. They shared the same hobby, and they were fun to talk to. But if he was honest with himself, the route that the group would hike today was a bit too easy for him, and that's why he decided to take another route and challenge himself. However, these woods were very dangerous, and people could easily get lost if they strayed from the path. And Sam, of course, would do exactly that. Luckily for Sam, his guide liked him and was okay with him going alone that day, but only under one condition. Sam needed to carry a GPS tracker so the guide could see his location at all times. That way, if anything happened to him, they would be able to easily track him down. But, of course, they hoped it wouldn't come to that, and Sam would return back to the meeting point safely. Sam didn't mind this, and he was happy to take the tracker with him. He felt confident enough that he would not need it, and that he would be able to make it through those woods by himself. But he agreed to wear it because he knew his guide thought it was important. Sam still had no idea about the surprises that were waiting for him on this hike, like the huge airplane he was about to encounter, and especially what he would find inside it. He would even get involved with the police. But let's take it step by step. As he walked through the woods, he enjoyed everything he saw and heard around him. The beautiful trees, the colorful plants, the sound of birds chirping. He felt completely at ease, like this was exactly where he belonged. And then he saw a perfect spot to take a short break and recharge. The sun shone through the trees and formed one beautiful circle of light on the forest floor. Sam sat down right on it, and he closed his eyes, enjoying the moment. He felt the sun on his skin, and he smelled the forest all around him. And he took a few deep breaths. He was so ready for this hike now. He continued through the forest, and he noticed the path was getting narrower and narrower. He was obviously going into the thick part of these woods, the part that most people avoid. But Sam thought he was experienced enough to give it a shot. And so he did. When he had said goodbye to his guide and the group, His guide had put something in his hand, saying, "Please use these, Sam. You can never be too careful out there." Sam opened it and saw that it was chalk, which he could use to mark his path once he got to the dense part of the forest. And so that's what he did. He made his way through the thick bushes and trees, leaving a mark each couple of 100 meters. He made sure to leave the marks at about eye level so he could easily spot them on his way back. He did not yet know that on his way back, he wouldn't even be using the same path. Sam continued, pulling and pushing the big leaves and branches out of his way. Suddenly, he noticed that the forest around him changed. It looked different. The trees were taller and balder, with not as many leaves growing on them. And in the distance, he could see something that caught his attention. He had originally planned on going east, but if he just marked his path, it wouldn't be an issue if he deviated from his plan and headed a bit north, he thought. The reason for this was that he had spotted a clearing further up north, and being as curious as he was, he wanted to see it from up close. This cannot be real. He made his way to the clearing, and when he finally pushed the last bush out of his way and stepped into the open space, he gasped. He pinched himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming, he thought to himself. But of course it was. Wow, I cannot believe it. Sam had finally spotted the plane. It looked old and abandoned, which was no surprise. After he came a bit closer and saw the red markings on its side and wings, recognizing that it came from the Second World War, he thought. He took a few more steps in the direction of the plane, but he was a bit scared to come closer. This part of the forest was completely silent, and he almost felt like an alarm would go off if he came too close to the plane. Of course, nothing like that would happen, but Sam still couldn't shake the feeling. For 1 second, he debated turning around and leaving this place, going back to his hiking group and continuing the trip with them. It would certainly be the smartest thing to do, but this thought immediately left his mind. He had just found this gem hidden in the forest. There was no way that he would just leave without checking it out. It must have been here for decades, and who knows how many people have stumbled upon it before him. It certainly couldn't have been many. The side where he had approached it from was right above a pool of water, almost like a little lake, so he wouldn't be able to enter it from there without getting soaked. He walked around the plane to check the other side, and sure enough, it was dry. Sam still marveled at this amazing discovery. He shook his head in disbelief and just couldn't contain his laughter. He quickly ran towards the plane and took a closer look at it. And then he chose one of the holes in the side, which probably used to be a window, to climb through. He slowly climbed his way up, very careful not to misplace his foot and fall down. It wasn't very high, but a fall from up there would definitely hurt. And he still had a long way to walk back to the meeting point. Not even a minute later, he was finally inside. And he wasn't just anywhere. He stood right in the cockpit. He held his breath as he looked around, and he was transported right back in time. The control panels were covered in dust, and everything was rusty. It all smelled wet and old and kind of musty. He also saw some old photos on both sides of the cockpit, which must have belonged to the pilot of this plane. He recognized the same few people in the photos, a woman and a little boy. Those must have been his wife and son, Sam assumed. When he turned around, he saw something that caught his attention. This definitely looked out of place there. Someone else must have left it there recently, Sam thought. And as he looked around, he spotted even more things that did not originally belong in the cockpit. You see, Sam had found a blanket and a little food supply. He decided to wait around and see if anyone would come here again. And sure enough, after a while, a girl showed up. She told him she was lost. She had been surviving in these woods for about a week, and she had found shelter in the old plane. Sam immediately called the police to make sure this girl got home safe again, and she was so thankful that he found her. He saved the girl's life, and he was seen as a hero.